Welcome back. In this lesson, we're going to look at the human impact on air. So the cleanliness of the air, how our industries are putting things into the air, the results that would happen as because of the substances in the air, how we're taking care of the temperature of the earth and the warming of the earth by putting things into the air. So there's a lot of controversy around these things. So let's look at some of it in detail. The air is getting thicker, if you will. The idea of certain gases will hold on to heat more than other gases. And if you increase that amount of gas in the air, then it acts very much like a blanket that holds on to the heat from the sun that lands on the earth. So for instance, the solar radiation can go through the atmosphere and strike the earth. It can warm the earth and then get reflected back up into space. And often, as it does that, it gets trapped in the atmosphere. The atmosphere, specifically, certain gases such as water vapor and carbon dioxide gas can hold on to this heat. So if you increase the amounts of water vapor or you increase the amounts of carbon dioxide gas more than at some previous time, then you can increase the temperature of the earth. And there's evidence that that's actually what has happened. As we take carbon materials, specifically fossil fuels from the ground, that has not been in the environment but has been deep underground for a long time, and then release that through burning into the air again, then the amount of carbon dioxide and water vapor that was not there before is now there, and you can increase the temperature of the earth. So that's called global warming. The carbon dioxide levels, as they've made record over it since the 1960s, has generally increased. And even before that, it was thought to have increased before they started making those. That's why they started making records. And the carbon dioxide levels, remember, is a type of gas that can hold on to solar radiation. You can also see that the amount of carbon dioxide has increased substantially through fossil fuel burning. So from the Industrial Revolution, so the end of the 18th century on, as factories have been made and those factories burned first wood and then coal specifically, that goes into the air and over a period of time can trap more and more solar radiation, and you end up with an increase in temperature. So temperature studies have indicated that in the last century, the global temperature, the mean global temperature, has risen about a degree Celsius, or a little bit less than a degree Celsius, and getting faster as it goes. So each year is going to go closer and closer to that higher number rather than the average of the lower number. And as many people attribute these changes to human activity, there are many scientists that would argue also that there are natural patterns that we've talked about in previous lessons that could be responsible for some of what we see in the increase of temperature, etc. Another way that we can impact the air is by smoke and mixing with fog. So the fog, remember, is simply a cloud. It's a low-level cloud. And if this low-level cloud is trapped by warmer, colder air masses that prevent it from moving, and it mixes with smoke, you can essentially keep that smoke down low to the ground where it would be in the air that people are trying to breathe. So if you were to have a fire or something that would produce different types of pollutants, vapors, normally it would go up into the high atmosphere and be diffused. But if the atmosphere would somehow mix it and keep it low, then that can be serious air pollution, and you'll see that a lot of times in large cities. Another problem that was successfully dealt with and is really a trophy of how that science has kind of convinced people to change behavior is in the 1970s, studies were done on the ozone layer, which is in the stratosphere, that, remember, the ozone acts to protect the Earth from the ultraviolet radiation from the sun. and it can be destroyed. Ozone is just a form of oxygen where three oxygen atoms are bound together in one molecule. Breathable oxygen is two oxygens bound together. And so it's not a poison or anything, but it acts as a filter, and it's very, very high. Certain chemicals that were released into the air will have been seen to degrade that ozone molecule, essentially pop it, if you will, and it will drop back into a breathable air molecule. So it's not poison, it's just that you have less of a filter, and the ozone layer was seen to be depleting seriously. From the into the 1970s, lots of laws all over the world were instigated where certain chemicals were not being able to be released. There were other ways to do what we were wanting them to do, and as a result, the ozone is restoring slowly. The hole in the ozone layer, which is kind of over New Zealand, Australia, Antarctica, is slowly repairing. Another problem in the air is acid rain or acid precipitation. So you can have acid snow, acid sleet, but if you were to have certain types of pollutants, especially some type of a sulfur pollutant, you can have higher amounts of acids which will react with the water that's in the air, the water vapor in the air, and then when it falls as rain or other types of precipitation, those acids can have effect on the groundwater and on the rocks and on buildings, etc. So it's called acid rain, and a lot of times it's exhaust fumes from automobiles and other types of industry. Coal is also a way to add to the acidity level of the air because there is a lot of sulfur in coal. There's different grades of coal, and the different amounts of sulfur can determine different amounts of acid that's left over in the air that can then contribute to acid rain. So a lot of people don't like coal. People around here do, however, like coal very much. And then the authors then took their attention to air pollution. How is it possible to control air pollution? You can see that making industries live up to a certain standards of cleanliness, or the capacity of the technology to do the same things we want machines to do, but with less pollution. That if you were to give incentives or even requirements on industry's technology can address that, and then as society accepts those new technologies, there's less pollution as a result. You can even have technologies in clean burning coal, in terms of burning coal that would somehow trap the sulfur gases that would contribute to the acid rain, etc. And of course, how you make cars and the technologies that you would use will determine also how much pollution is going in the air that could then substantially reduce acid rain and other problems.